So, what's the connection between a billionaire, a well-known conservative commentator, and a single mom? Well, according to one really provocative online argument, it all boils down to one powerful and maybe even dangerous idea about trust. In this explainer, we're going to break down that argument and the crazy high-profile story right at the heart of it. Okay, this right here, this is the core idea from the source material we're looking at today. The claim is that deep down, on some subconscious level, our default setting is just to believe women. The speaker argues this isn't just a small bias, but something that's baked into everyone thinks. Yep, even the most skeptical guys out there. But what happens when that trust is, misplaced? Well, according to this argument, it can cost you big time. So get this. Here's the first big kind of counterintuitive claim from the source. The more successful a man is, the more vulnerable he actually becomes. The argument is that these high-status men, they've less reason to be suspicious of people, right? So they're way more likely to just take a woman at her word. And it's that blind spot, that automatic trust that allegedly sets the whole stage for a pretty dramatic downfall. To really hammer this point home, the source doesn't start with a billionaire. Nope, it starts with a much more relatable, everyday situation. It's a simple story meant to show this blind spot in action. So the story goes like this. A man is planning to marry a single mom. When the speaker asks him why he trusts her version of why her last marriage ended, he just repeats the sob story she told him. And here's the key point the speaker makes. It literally never even occurred to him to go talk to the ex-husband to get his side of the story. He just believed her. The source argues this is a perfect, small-scale example of that default trust we were just talking about. So the source then takes that exact same dynamic, believing someone's story without checking it out, and blows it up onto a much, much bigger stage. The very public, very messy, and super high-stakes drama between Elon Musk and Ashley St. Clair. All right, let's do a quick recap of the timeline here. Conservative commentator Ashley St. Clair meets Elon Musk. What happens next is a pretty public flirtation, they have a child together, and then a very public fallout. We're talking social media clashes, all of it kicking off after Musk apparently spent Valentine's Day with the mother of his other children. Now, according to the source, the real root of the problem was this huge disconnect between St. Clair's public image and her alleged past. On one hand, she's this known conservative voice, but the source makes some pretty specific claims about a very different background. The whole argument is that this was information Musk could have looked into, but he didn't, because he just defaulted to trusting the image she was presenting. And this brings us right back to the central argument. The whole public mess, the custody battle, all of it, the speaker claims, was completely preventable. In this view, Musk is basically the ultimate example of that first anecdote. A super high-status guy who, allegedly, didn't do his homework and just believed the story he was being told. So what was the final straw? What pushed things over the edge? According to the source, it was one specific social media post that triggered Musk to take the really drastic step of filing for custody of their one-year-old son. On January 11th, St. Clair drops this apology on X. She completely renounces her past anti-transgender views. Remember, she even published a children's book on it and says she now wants to be an advocate for the trans community. I mean, this was a massive public reversal. And just a day later, Musk's response comes out. The source interprets this as more than just a reaction to her changing her mind. It's seen as a response to a perceived threat. The source connects this to Musk's public struggles with another child's transition and argues that he saw her newfound advocacy as a direct danger to their son. And this is where the source really zooms out, framing this entire blowup as a gender war. The evidence? Look at the aftermath. A lot of prominent conservative women publicly took St. Clair's side. The source claims this proves that when push comes to shove, gender loyalty can be way stronger than political ideology. So, after all that, what are we supposed to take away from this? The source doesn't just leave it as a dramatic story. It boils the whole thing down into three really stark conclusions about how men and women interact today. All right, here they are. First, on men's rights. The source basically says that if a guy with Musk's power and money can't even secure access to his own kid, what chance does the average guy have?
Second, on women's beliefs. The argument is that a woman's convictions aren't really fixed, they're fluid, and they often just adopt the beliefs of whatever man they're with. And finally, the most sweeping claim of all, that the whole idea of a traditional woman in 2025 is a total myth, and anyone who says they are one is, in the source's words, lying. So we've just walked through a pretty detailed and, yeah, very controversial argument. It frames this whole story not as just celebrity drama, but as this huge case study in a modern gender war. And it kind of leaves us with a pretty big question, right? When you strip away all the fame and the billions of dollars, does a conflict like this actually reveal something true about the hidden rules and unspoken assumptions that are running all of our modern relationships?